college students often come across these lengthy terms and conditions. Well, do any of y'all read them? I don't think so. I personally don't. I just click, I accept, and move on. Well, I think we might have just given the for naming rights for our firstborn child. Well, um, we're not alone in this. This was actually a survey conducted by researchers at security.org, and 98% of the participants who took part in the survey actually agreed to this exact clause. However, 96% of people opted out of Apple's tracking policies when Apple clearly gave them an option to do so. Well, this tells us that the problem isn't apathy. People actually care. They just aren't given the right tools to do so. Looking at the scale of this problem, there are about 6 billion internet users worldwide, and 91% of them actually blindly accept these terms, 97% of which are between the ages of 18 and 34. I want to highlight an important aspect of this problem to show its significance. This would be consent is permanent, context is not. To explain this, let me give you an example. You download a mental health app today, and it takes your data for, well, business purposes. And down the line, a couple of years, it sells your data to your insurance company, and your insurance premium rises. Well, this wasn't just in theory. This was an actual case, and Erin Kaufman, a worker at Aetna, actually faced this, where he realized that the insurer was taking data of millions of Americans and mapping it with their patient records in order to predict healthcare prices. The root causes for this problem would be that, firstly, the terms and conditions kind of exploit human psychology because they're long and take it or leave it statements. And the second thing is that these policies are actually meant for lawyers. But then the law mandates that lawyers and users see the same exact set of policies in order to maintain uniformity. That's why users actually have to come across this legal jargon. Lastly, economically, a lot of companies benefit from the data extracted by these policies. Looking at the timeline and the failure analysis, well, privacy policies were first introduced in 1995. Ever since, there have been multiple attempts to solve it. Privacy Bird was the first one, and Privacy Bird basically analyzed the machine-readable format of these policies, which is actually now discontinued. And it had some discrepancies, and hence it eventually died. TOSDR was this crowdsourced platform where people actually manually went through the policies of major websites and highlighted the dicey clauses. However, since it was not automated, it could not scale to every website or mobile applications, and it also could not keep up with the frequent changes that these policies have. Privacy Grade rated apps by what is surprising and not what is sensitive. This actually was a smart way of doing it, but then users did not trust this rating, and users often just looked over it. PryBot is the most recent one, which was an AI chatbot which could answer questions about these terms and conditions. However, essentially, this chatbot kind of required you to know what you're looking for, which was the main problem in the first case. Looking at the future, so the system was never designed to give users real levers. Looking at the futures of this problem, on the user side, we are trusting in tech a lot more, and we're becoming less vigilant, likewise. And people are more consenting more blindly to these clauses. And on the company side, data is currency right now in today's world. And they are profiting from this data, especially with the coming of AI. AI can analyze seemingly harmless data to infer sensitive information. And that is a scary space. Let me ask you this question. Down the line, would you want to see a clone of yourself out there because of something you consented to today unknowingly, that too? Lastly, I'd like to say that I think the problem is a lot bigger than Canadian college students. It implies to all internet users. So I'd like to define my problem statement by saying that, how might we improve decision-making related terms and conditions for internet users to protect data privacy? Remember, consent is permanent, context is not. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I love the catchy title, Terms and Conditions Apply. Thanks, Parth. Okay, so we will have our final set of questions from Q&A. Who would like to begin? Drew?
So you mentioned a couple tools people have or previously had access to analyze these terms and conditions. Have you gathered examples of people who actually challenged or refused to use services because of problematic clauses?
So, I mean, essentially, when anyone comes across these kind of terms, you don't really think of, you just want to get away or get around it. You don't want to read through everything. And all of these problems, no one right now, the people I've talked to a lot of users here, and they essentially did not care about looking through the clauses or like looking at a service in order to simplify the process. So that was a thing. And I also interviewed a professor, an expert in the field, and she told me about privacy bird and privacy grade and how back in the day it had like some legal problems. Like with privacy bird, there was actually, in this case with Facebook, where they had this clause which was different in the machine-readable format and the user-readable format. And that was a whole legal case.
If you don't like the terms and conditions of Facebook, they don't really care. Just you don't use Facebook.
Yeah.
You just want to be aware of what you've signed up for?
Yeah, that's what I'm hinting at.
That's what this would do.
Sorry?
And that's what...
Yeah. So I want to improve decision making. We cannot, eventually the problem space would evolve into something that's better with respect to your data privacy. But then right now, I think we can start with better decision making, better alternatives, and hopefully like raising awareness amongst people in order to actually tackle this problem.
Right. So the problem you're solving is exposing that to me, the user that has to make a decision to sign up for these terms and conditions.
Yes. So I want to improve that decision making, and eventually down the line, a couple of years, when they actually are aware of the space and companies are being targeted for these policies, then I would like to improve these policies too.
When you were gathering data and interviewing other consumers, basically, because this is affecting everybody here, did you find that everyone was equally concerned, or were there particular types of data and websites and contexts where people were more or less concerned?
Yes. So basically, when I talked to a lot of my friends here, they told me that, I mean, does it really matter? Do I really care about this? And they were more trusting in like bigger companies such as Google or Apple, rather than maybe a third-party website that I've never heard of before, but then I need it for my coursework. So that was the thing. But then on the second hand, when I told them about the consequences, about what actually is happening and what the futures is, what the futures are, and then some of the case studies, the awareness part of it, then they were more concerned. And the level of concern was different according to different people, but then this was the overall trend.
Okay, and then did you find there was difference, you mentioned health data, maybe like Google Maps, for example, if someone's walking from here or there, were there like particular scenarios where you found people were more concerned?
Okay, let's say, taking the example of Google Maps, if Google Maps required my camera access, then I would be concerned. That was the concept of surprising clauses rather than sensitive clauses. Because Google Maps is tracking my location 24/7 because it needs to know where I am. But then it does not need my camera access. So these clauses are often what people are more concerned about.
Great, thank you.
Do we have time for one more question? Andre, go ahead. Oh, Drew, you have a question as well? Okay.
And if I am someone who's concerned about terms and conditions and awareness, I mean, throwing some T's and C's into Gemini and saying, hey, look, I'm concerned about these three things, I can get an answer in 20 seconds.
Not really. So AI right now isn't actually able to analyze these terms and conditions accurately. So I've tried it a couple times too. And with the professor I talked to, she has experimented this a lot. However, the results or the actual sensitive clauses that AI was highlighting weren't very relevant to the user or weren't very accurate at this moment.
Okay, Drew had one final question. We can squeeze that in.
I'm just wondering if this is more of a consumer level problem, or is it something that should be addressed at like a government regulatory level? Because, like, is the core of the problem that people aren't aware of problematic conditions, or the fact that those problematic conditions exist in the first place?
So I think there's a very fine line between this. There are better policies being implemented on the legal side of it. However, these policies are slow and slow to adapt, and users often aren't aware of them, and companies will find their way around these policies. So I think it's best to tackle this on the consumer side in order to raise awareness about this thing, because the legalities also take a lot of time to change, and yeah, that would be my answer to that.
Okay, thank you very much to you, Parth. Okay, thanks very much to